some slides, and I've got my notes. So we've our baby Christian, really. So we came, there's some dates on here, 23rd to the 9th of July in 2023 was the first time I dragged Kim, kicking and screaming, through the doors at Wells Road. He was like, no, I don't want to come. You go and tell me all about it. And I was like, you're coming anyway. And he walked in, and then he's like, there's a band. And that pretty much sold it for him. And then October that year was when I got baptized at Wells Road. And then the following year, 2024, was when Kim got baptized at Wells Road. And then 2025, this year, in May, we got married, when some of you were there. So a lot has happened since we walked through those doors, really. And one of the things that we remember very distinctly when we walked through the doors was that there was I think it was a banner or something up, maybe where the coffee hatch was that said, "Come as you are." And for us, that's what it's all about for our business. It literally is come as you are. And it was this sense of coming home, and when you're at home, it's okay. You can have your fluffy slippers on. You can have your onesie. It's all good, right? But what happened here? I got the weekly bulletin from that day, and I remember picking this up. Whether Mags gave it to us or Val, I can't remember. But that was when we discovered that, as a church, Counterslip read the Bible from cover to cover over 2 years, right? And this is the first Bible I ever bought for myself. It's a New King James, and I think I bought it in the year 2000, but you can see, I showed it to Debs just now, and she goes, if you saw my first Bible, it's hanging on by a thread. I never read it. It's traveled with me for 25 years, and I never read it. And the only reason I went along, it was a Methodist church. I went along to the Methodist church because I wanted to use their church hall. And that was the only reason I went along to that church. And she ended up, the woman who was in charge of the worship leader, she actually gave me a piano to take home in return. And I was like, it's just because she heard that I've obviously got piano grade 8. She goes, you can take the piano home in case we ever need a backup. And I never ever did have to use it. But that was the reason, and that was why I bought a Bible. But they never read the Bible from cover to cover. So when we came on the 9th of July, it says here, Isaiah 33 and 34. That was what we read on that day, for that Sunday. And we started reading, I started reading the Bible. I can't speak for Kim. But anyway, I started reading the Bible, and it really it was like a foreign language. It didn't make sense to me. And, maybe some of you feel that way. But then I heard someone say, I can't remember who or when or what, that said, just read it anyway, whether it makes sense or not, because at some point it will start to make sense. And so I have read the Bible, and then the last 2 years, we are nearing the end again, another 5 months or so, we're nearing the end of this two-year stint. And so when Matt asked me, will you do this? And I was like, yeah. And then go, no. You're like, I can't take this back. And then the next thought that appeared in my head was, what am I going to wear? And I'll come back to that because old habits die hard, okay? Old habits die hard. Then I looked up what readings were for this week, and it was the end of Corinthians 1 and the start of 2. And it really was not an easy read at all. But in the last few months, I've gone from one thing, the end of 1 Corinthians, to the start of 2. But the last month or so, 6 weeks or so, I've kind of felt drawn. The man up there is saying to me, let's look to the start of 2 Corinthians. And the message really that I kept getting was about living unveiled. So some of you know me, and I've been in the fitness industry for 30 plus years. And the fitness industry is very much about body image. And it's about how you look. And I remember the first time I had to do a presentation, I weighed 7 stone, okay? And I was told I had to lose weight at that point. And if I were to stand on a stage, I need to get a tan. It's like you got to look a certain way. And so when I started to kind of look at these 2 letters, and I needed some context. And so I kind of had a look, and there's follow my train of thought, okay? So there's a map. I had no idea where Corinth was. So there it is. If you didn't know, that is where it is. And I had no idea, Ionian Sea, Greece. I haven't really been to Greece that much. But there it was, and I didn't realize. I thought it was an island, but it's not. I think there is a canal now, is there, that kind of goes through. It's about just under 4 miles, this little piece of land that connected it. And because of that, here are some things I found out about Corinth. I'm sure Dennis can help me along the way. So in terms of ancient Corinth, there is all this stuff. It was a bustling port city, 700,000 people in Corinth. That's more than Bristol. Of which 500,000 were slaves. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. They were famous for bronze mirrors. And I'll come back to the bronze mirror later on. Lots of pagan temples, and the temple of Aphrodite had something like over 1,000 prostitutes, or something along those lines, okay? So it's very much, so Corinth gave me a picture when I was kind of going through this, that it was all about image, it was all about success, it was all about immorality, there was a lot of wealth, and it's all about social climbing, because that was the place to be. And it made me reflect on life today and what kind of society that we're perhaps living in as well. And certainly from the fitness industry that I've been in, it is very much about how you look. And if any of you on social media, it's just not a good place, is it? Not a healthy place to be in. But, that's where I've kind of had my public life for what I do for a living, is on social media. And it's even more prolific when you are sponsored, because you have to turn up by a sponsored brand, and they say you have to post, all of you have to post on a certain day wearing those trainers, and they're trainers that you don't even like, don't really fit very well. And so it really made me think, right, there's a message in this about life today. The other thing also, I've kind of in my notes here, it says that the people in Corinth were obsessed with wisdom and eloquence. So they valued smooth talkers and impressive speakers, right? And they judged their leaders by charisma and the ability to dazzle with words. So that's another interesting thing to think about. So imagine, so I had to imagine this, like this kind of society of which the fitness industry is just a tiny bit of it. And Paul writes these letters, and I didn't realize this. There's 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, or do you say 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians? I don't know. Anyway. But number 2 is not number 2, right? It's actually the 3rd or possibly the 4th letter, because a couple got lost along the way. And if you kind of look at the letters, they're not, he's kind of like reining them in, because they're living in this crazy society, and old habits die hard, right? So we're going to read a little bit. I'm going to jump around a little bit from chapter 1, and then we'll go on to chapter 3. So I'm going to read this, which will come up there. So this is from the NIV. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. So I look at the word troubles, and it's a bit like, got a bit of car trouble, or call Gasper. Like troubles didn't seem so big a deal. Then he goes on in verse 8, if you jump through, it says, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure for beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself." That's a little bit more than trouble, isn't it? It seems a lot more than that. So I then looked up the word trouble, and in the NASB, it uses the word affliction. Now, English is not my first language anyway, so I don't use the word affliction. I don't know about you guys, whether you use it in this day and age. Then, in my old New King James from back in 1990-something, it actually uses the word tribulation. There's another English word that I don't really know what it means. So I looked it up, and the root word is the same root word as this instrument called a tribulum, and they use it to crush wheat and crush grapes and stuff. And on the next photograph, there's a close-up of the underside of a tribulum, and that's little tiny sharp stones, and they use it to crush. So for him to use a word like tribulation, he was actually feeling extremely crushed. Yeah, to the point that he was despairing. He was despairing on life itself. So going back to Corinth and the kind of society it was, where people valued charming speakers, charismatic speakers, and they valued, how you look and everything else. Paul starts his letter off by saying, that he's not in a good place. He's not in a good place. I don't know about you, but if you're on social media, usually people tend to post all the good stuff, right? And they hide behind that. Then I said to Kim last night in bed, right, as I do, talking about this. And I say that as and when people do decide to, share how they're really feeling, people don't want to know. Isn't that interesting? We want to feel good when we go onto social media and we look at the positive stuff, right? And so we put on a front. I went off on a tangent when I did this bit about putting on a front because being Chinese, Malaysian, there's a real, my friend Eunice is here, there's a Chinese phrase called saving face. So that you don't want to lose face, right? And so it means that you put on this shiny mask basically every time you go out, and you don't air your dirty laundry to the world, because that's just not the done thing. It will bring shame on your family, right? It will bring shame on your society and your community. So there's this whole thing about saving face. Kim and I did some business networking many years ago, and there was a speaker, and his talk was about it's okay to not be okay. And how perhaps in society, you go up to someone and say, "Hey, you all right? Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm okay." But we're not really. And so I think Paul is role modeling being open. Yeah. With the very start of his letter, he's saying, I'm going through some stuff here. I'm really going through, more than a bit of stuff, it's more than a bit of trouble. He felt really crushed, and he's talking about it. But we're still today in a society where we don't talk about stuff very much. I think we do here, but out there in the world out there, the outside world, we don't tend to. So I'm not going to go into it, but I went off on a tangent on mental health issues and the number of people in the Christian, within the church, the number of pastors, and lots of other things that, and with regards to mental health. And I think there is a call here from Paul to live more openly, because all the stuff actually doesn't matter. The society, climbing, the how you look and body image and everything else. So he then goes on, and the reason, this is next chapter 3, verses 1 to 3, as you kind of read on, he's basically saying that all this stuff doesn't matter because are we beginning to commend ourselves again, or do we need, like some people, letters of recommendation to you or from you. You yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You show that you are a letter from Christ, the result of our ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. We don't need all this stuff. We don't need, it's like LinkedIn endorsement. No, we don't need all of that. We really don't need all of that. That's what he's saying here. And when I read this bit, I don't know about you, like the first time I came to church on that 9th of July, I cried. I cried the whole, the whole service, I cried. And every time I feel touched by God, Holy Spirit, I cry, right? And when I read this, I cried because we are love letters. We're Jesus' love letters to the world, as we are. All right, so he was talking to Corinth, and they're the ripple effect of his love for them. And the ripple effect of that, I do what I do. I teach classes because why? Someone once said to me, I asked them, I said, why'd you come to class? And she actually said, because I go home a nicer person. So it's not the one life that's been touched, right? How we live our lives is, we're ripple effects. And so we can then, okay, he's saying something. But I just feel that how we live our lives is the ripple effect out there into the world. And, we can live openly and authentically. And that is enough. That is enough. We are love letters to the world. He then goes on to then say in verses 13 to 16, he says that we are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. Okay? So when Moses came down from the Mount Sinai after meeting God, he was shining so brightly, his face was shining so brightly that, people just go, whoa, can't handle it, right? And so he put a veil on. And I don't know about you, but I know that there are times in my life where I've probably hurt some people along the way by being too honest sometimes. When you kind of, Eunice is laughing, because she knows if she comes to me with something, I'll just tell her as it is. And it's hard. It's really tough to, when someone holds a mirror up to you and shines it back at you, it's, and sometimes we just can't. What's that movie? You Can't Handle the Truth. What was that movie called? A Few Good Men, yeah. And I think sometimes we can't, and maybe that is why, that Moses had this veil, is because that it was just too much. It was just too much for people. But then it goes on to say also that the glory was fading, right? The light was fading, because that was it wasn't going to be permanent, because then Jesus is coming with the new covenant. So in the next bits it says, but their minds were made dull, for to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. All right? What Jesus did for us, the veil was torn down, and that was it. So there was no barrier anymore between us and God. We don't need that anymore. But old habits die hard, right? And they're living in this society where there's pagan churches, there's all this stuff actually going on. But in the new covenant, the veil is gone. And we don't actually need to hide from God. We don't need to hide from Jesus, and yet we still do. We still do. And I think it's been talked about here over the year about, repentance, about we've got to turn back, we've got to keep our eyes on Jesus. and that is what we need to do. And yet, we sometimes feel the shame, or we pull the veil over our own eyes instead. But in reality, he's seen it all, right? He knew us even before we were created. So, we just need to essentially come as we are. Essentially come as we are. I found this really quite fascinating, because then the whole concept of the veil, if you're looking at the bride and the groom back then, there is a slide there. So that is an ancient Jewish wedding. That's a veil and a half, isn't it? But I know that it's because I've done it. And I mean, I when I bought this for myself, however many years ago, I thought that was enough. And I got to use the church hall for free, right? No, I didn't. But I thought that was enough. I carry that around with me everywhere. I still have it today, right? Now I have several different other versions of the Bible. But we've got to draw close. We have to draw close. I think a few weeks ago we talked about Peter on the boat, and the minute he took his eyes off Jesus, that's when he started to sink. And so how close are we? How close do we need to be? If that's a wedding, for the groom to remove the veil, you got to be pretty close. You got to be arm's length at least, isn't it? Hello. You got to be close. And the veil is going to be removed with tenderness. It's going to be removed with love and with care. He's not going to rip it off, because he loves us anyway. Right? He loves us anyway. And so we've got to draw close to him. And when that veil is removed, I actually had a look for Chinese weddings. Ancient Chinese weddings, they also wear a veil, but you can't even see through it. It literally is a cloth. But the veil here is removed so that there is then complete trust. There is complete intimacy, right? There is total acceptance to allow ourselves to be fully seen. And sometimes maybe with the veil, we are afraid of what's on the other side of the veil, but then also we're perhaps ashamed of what we are behind the veil as well. But the invitation is here to draw close every day to draw close to him. All right? And then going back to, mentioned bronze mirrors earlier on. So this is an ancient bronze mirror. And obviously it's not that manky. It was very polished, and only rich people could afford these mirrors. But these mirrors are not like the mirrors we know today. The reflection's not going to be as it would be if we looked in the mirror today. So there's still going to be flaws. So you can look in the mirror all you like, in that mirror all you like, but there's still going to be flaws. There are going to be lumps and bumps. It really made me think of anyone who goes to a gym, you've been to classes and the big mirrors, the studio filled with mirrors, and oh dear, like some mirrors, they're not very flattering at all. You go like, don't really want the mirrors in here, right? And it's a little bit like that. We're looking in these wonky mirrors, and all we see are our flaws. And perhaps that is why we are embarrassed, and that is why we kind of want to hide and pull the veil over ourselves as well. So what Paul was essentially, what the message that I got really is that Jesus already knows us completely. Right? He knew us before we came to faith. He knows us now. And there's nothing we can hide from him. So living unveiled is an invitation to intimacy, to closeness, to being fully known, and to be fully loved. And when we see our own flaws, the question here is, what veil do you feel compelled to pull over? Because again, old habits die hard, right? It could be veils of shame. It could be veils of having it all together. It could be that you're currently just going through some struggles in life. And when we can live a life unveiled, this is verses 17 to 18. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. I've highlighted it in green there, contemplate the Lord's glory. I think in order, it might be in that or might be in the NASB. It talks about beholding as if in a mirror. So rather than holding that mirror up and looking at yourself through the mirror, why don't we look to him? Why are we looking in a mirror when we can look at him? And so we have this whole thing that we keep doing to ourselves when we don't need to, because it's already been done for us. So living unveiled really means that we want to just stop trying to project a perfect image. So me from going like, what am I going to wear? So just like, I'm just going to turn off as I am, so that I'm completely comfortable. And when we live veiled, we're actually almost preventing other people from seeing God in us. And, so living unveiled really brings some freedom. Paul is asking us to look to Jesus, to contemplate his glory. I listened to something the other day, and it kind of resonated with me. And I think we are all inherently perhaps wired for glory. That is why we get attracted to following celebrities on social media. We put them on a pedestal. We put football teams on a pedestal. I should walk out now with the football team supporters in this room. We put things on pedestals because we want to glorify them. We want to glorify them when really there's only one that we need to glorify. Right? There's only one we need to glorify. There's only one that we need to look towards, and the more we do that, the more we are transformed, and the more we become. So what was it? Being with him, learning from him, and becoming like Jesus. So Jesus is here. He is here right now, and he's here with outstretched arms, open hands, and he wants to remove your veil, whatever that might be. Whatever that might be. There is no judgment here. It is literally all he wants. He knows us anyway, and he wants us to come as we are to him. So the invitation that I'm kind of getting is just to invite us all to reflect on what veils are we covering on a day-to-day basis, and he just wants us to draw close so that he can keep lifting it off us, keep removing it. He already did it before, but we're just stubborn, and we're stuck in our old ways and our old habits, and we just keep drawing it over ourselves again. Yes.